Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial.
Today, we've got an awesome guest on the show, Mr. Eric Martel. Eric Martel purchased his first apartment building at 18 years of age while still in university. And after graduation, in his position as an actuary, he was dismayed to see hundreds of company pension plans being rolled over into 401ks, shifting the retirement risk all to employees. And this made him reconsider traditional beliefs about saving for retirements. And after the Dotcom crash in 2001, Eric started looking for ways to earn passive income and founded MartelTurnkey with his family. Eric now shares what he has learned so that you too can stop trading your time for money. So, Eric, it is a pleasure to have you on. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about you. This is a great jumping off point about your corporate experience. Why don't you talk about some of the pain that you experienced there in your own words, and then we can talk about how that led you into real estate. Because we skipped over that a little bit in the intro, so I wanted to make sure we explored it fully.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I started my first apartment building. I was 18 years old, 8-unit apartment building, and then cash flowing, no money down because I had no money. And really, what really allowed me to do that was this real estate investor, and that mentored me basically into buying that. And I didn't realize the importance of that mentor until when I started writing my book. That's when I thought, well, I keep mentioning this guy. It's like maybe he had more of an impact on me than I realized. And so when I kind of analyzed that, I came to the realization that my parents were great and all of that, but they had a massive gap in knowledge between what they knew about punching the clock at the factory and then and investing. They didn't know anything about investing. They thought that people in business or rich people cheated the system somehow, but they didn't understand the system themselves. So we said, how do you know people cheated and stuff like that? So and then when I met this guy, this real estate investor, he was just a regular, he was a community college teacher, nothing special, no smarter than anybody else. And that's when I realized that, this is not about some kind of special key to a special door that allows you to get in. It's some kind of skills and knowledge that you have that anybody can gain to basically start investing in real estate and build equity, build cash flow and all of that. And that was my big lesson there. So that's when I bought my first apartment building, cash flowing, but I didn't have money. So he taught me what he knew, but he was kind of like a solo individual kind of guy. He never really partnered up with anybody. And the knowledge that he gave me also is the knowledge that he couldn't give me around putting a deal together, about dealing with other people's money and all of that. And this is why I ended up, went back to corporate America and worked as an actuary, a consulting associate actuary, and basically destroyed retirement systems for most corporate America. And then worked in high tech. And then I moved to San Francisco. At that point, I had tons of stock options in 2000, and at perfect timing for the dot-com crash to occur. And so I lost millions of dollars on that dot-com crash, basically started from scratch and came to another kind of key moment in my life where I had to decide, what do I do now? This is nonsense. I was up here, my financial advisor tell me, hey, you've made it. And then 6 months later, oh no, you have to keep working for another 40 years. Yeah. So that was a big gap. So I said, I need to figure something. I need to be in control. I need to have passive income. I want to be able to work and live anywhere I want. I don't want to be limited, because as an actuary, you kind of limited, or as a lawyer, you kind of limited where you can work. You have to kind of get your license again and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to deal with any of that. I didn't want to sell my hours anymore. And that's when I started doing businesses. I started looking for actually real estate up front, but I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. Nothing worked. The numbers didn't make sense. If I wanted cash flow, I had to put more money down, 50% down. And then the return on investment was 2%, 3%. I was I can do better somewhere else.
In the stock market.
Even the bonds, I think, were higher at that point. So that's not going to work. And then I didn't want to travel too far out. I didn't want to go like Fresno. I know some people actually invested in Fresno. They were very successful at that point. I don't like driving that much. And I still had like in mind that I would have to go and drive there. So started a couple of businesses with my wife, low carb grocery store, gourmet sauce company, and all of that. And came back to real estate really like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. This was the different, I tried to, again, with my two sons to kind of do it again in the Bay Area, do more flip, do wholesaling, do all of that. It was just insane. I mean, the market was not even as hot as it is today. It was just insane. You would go to a house, a complete gut job in San Francisco, $745,000 was the list price. I put an offer for 1.4 million or something like that, and it sold for 1.6 million. This is ridiculous. Two houses that I actually bid on, put an offer on in San Francisco. Both of them ended up in a newspaper about how crazy the real estate, as examples of how crazy the real estate market was.
That's incredible.
And they were like a couple of years apart, but so that didn't work out. And so then we said, okay, well, let's look out of state. At this point, we have technology at that, we have the phone, we have DocuSign, like electronic signing, we have, cameras everywhere. And so we said, well, let's look out of state. Let's look at, and let's be strategic about it. Now we're going to start with a white piece of paper and say, which market do we want to go to? We want landlord friendly state. We want to have, some kind of affordable housing. We want to have look at that 1% rule. At the metro level, look at what's the median rent? What is the median house value? Is it close to that 1% rule? Then there's probably a good probability that we're going to find something in there. Also look at growth, the economic growth, and also demographic growth. We didn't want to have anything that was too exuberant in terms of growth, because that's going to affect the market. If a population is growing at 5% a year, there's going to be too much demand on the real estate. We won't be able to find deals. So that's going to be out. These kinds of things. So we basically established a whole bunch of criteria. Yeah. So we started with Memphis, Cleveland, did a couple of tests in those cities. And we bought something in St. Louis as well, and went great. We bought that house I think we bought that house like $40,000, put $5,000 or $10,000 down, and it appraised for $60,000 and we were able to get all our money out and do it again. So well, this is great. We're printing money.
That's awesome.
And then, it just kept on going after that. As we grew, our friends, they've seen that people we knew and our family knew what we were doing. We always did something different than other people. So they said, what are you guys doing now? And I said, well, we're investing in real estate. I said, what? We're investing in Memphis. What? Why Memphis? Blah, blah, blah. And then, so that's going to say, well, I want to invest with you. I want to lend you money. I want to be a joint venture. I want to buy one of your rental properties. And then, well, we didn't think about selling them, but okay. So that's when we started selling and we decided to basically rename ourselves MartelTurnkey and start selling to investors. We really realized that there was a market for that, and we were doing it better than some of the other players out there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for explaining all that. That gives us a lot of context for what we're going to be talking about now, because
sorry, I've been kind of bad.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. I like it because it paints a good roadmap for a lot of the folks out there who are potentially looking at, starting from scratch, just like you did. Obviously you had a mentor to help you in the beginning, but you're putting the pieces together to find something that you wanted to do out there. And since you worked as a lone wolf, it's very easy for me to understand that you would also want to expand that model. And I can almost guarantee you right now that it is not a lone wolf business that you have going on.
No, we have a big
you've
team.
Grown beyond that.
Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah. So the main reason that we wanted to talk on the show, and I can understand there's a lot of things involved in this, right? When doing turnkeys, you have the acquisitions piece, you have the rehab piece, the property management. There's a lot there, right? There's all these pieces. Yeah. And so what we're going to be talking about today is task management, because it's one of the superpowers that you mentioned that you had. I can clearly see how that would be the case because you worked in corporate jobs for much of this while you were building up your business on the side. Let's talk about what task management means to you. And is it related to time management? I just want to hear your take on what the superpower means to you.
I mean, yeah, task management is really, yeah, it's also about time management, but it's not just that, because time management is more like personal, but often it's referred as personal. But to me, task management is looking at the tasks that you have to do, the tasks that you have to delegate, being able to prioritize them, and also being able to estimate some of the tasks are very short term. You want to be able to, just get them out, get them done, get them out of the way. If it's less than 5-10 minutes, then you have things that you have to concentrate, you have to spend some time on it. Then it's about estimating also kind of how long you're going to do that, how long is it going to take to do that, when is it due, is there like some kind of hard date, is it something that I need to do we need other people, do I need to delegate that to somebody else? This is kind of critical to basically be able to handle all these tasks, who's working on what, and then what am I responsible for. And the other thing too that's an important tool is also time blocking. So basically blocking your time in your calendar. If you know it's going to take, I need to concentrate for an hour. I know people are going to say, what, an hour? More than 5 minutes. But
that's the culture we live in, sir. That's
exactly,
right.
exactly. I do a lot of TikToks, and just like 2 minutes is like, this is it. And people can't even watch that whole thing.
For one, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so but sometimes you need to concentrate, dedicate a certain amount of time. You don't want to be bothered. You put something on your calendar and say, I'm going to be working on this.
Yeah,
that frees your mind to do other things. And also part of that task management to me is kind of like when I start my day and when I end my day, I look at shifting priorities and things that need to be done that should have been, or things that should have been done that were not done, and kind of like reviewing all of that.
Cool. Let's talk about the tools that you use to keep track of all this. I know there's a lot of different electronic tools or maybe pen and paper tools. How do you think about doing all of this and how do you track everything?
Yeah. So, I mean, the calendar, I live by my calendar. So if it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. So that's one thing. The other thing too is I use Asana. I mean, it's a pretty good tool for task management and stuff like that. So I have different projects, and different companies have different kind of projects as well. So I keep track of that, and then we can easily delegate to people and say, yeah, you need to work on that, you need to do this, and this is when it's due, and then people can put notes. So that's pretty good for these task management piece of it. And of course, we have the CRM, our customer relationship management software that we use for all the properties. So all the properties are in there. We have different workflows that automate things. And that also creates tasks for different people, including myself. And then that's another place where I normally get that in an email, or it's in the CRM. And I can look at that task list there as well. So it's kind of like these two things. And then there's the email. So email, I flag things kind of red, orange, green, depending on things. So things that need to be done today, I flag them as red. Orange is things that need to happen, by next couple of days. And then I have like green is things that are ready to go. The yellow is things that I'm waiting on somebody else to respond to the email. So that's kind of how I do things.
That is really cool. I have to say too, in listening to you speak, I'm glad that I'm on the right track because I use the exact same tools. I use my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. And I use Asana to help delegate and do things. And I know there's other people that use Monday or ClickUp or some other form, or Notion even, but I love that you're doing that. And then I also have really proud of my email inbox because I segment it. So it's very like it started in the top. So those are my task items to do. And then it's unread in the middle, and then the bottom is everything else. And I have all these filters that come in that I can predetermine. Anyway, it's a whole nother topic anyway, but I love this because this is totally appealing to my engineering brain. And so that's why I want to get to the bottom of this a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about, now we know the tools that you use and we know what task management is. How did you develop this skill? Like, how did you get to know to even do all of this stuff? Was it necessity or what?
Well, so pretty much by necessity, because when I started working in high tech, I ended up becoming pretty soon, my leadership skills were kind of like recognized. And then that's when I started being more like technical lead or something like that. And I'm not even an engineer, but I was technical lead on some technologies and stuff like that. And then after that, I basically moved into project management very quickly. Yeah, so I got certified as a PMP. I also went to Stanford University for an advanced project management kind of certificate there as well. They don't even offer the program anymore, I don't think. But that's kind of when I learned my skills, because I had to manage projects, I had to manage other people, and all kinds of different deliverables, different things. So that was a great way for me to try different methods and say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then, oh, that didn't work. And then kind of like redo the project plan and all that. Then I also got into agile methodology, which is kind of what Asana kind of does now, much more agile from that perspective. So I did a lot of project in agile as well, to help basically coordinate all the efforts and then kind of like delegate tasks and keep track. I think that the biggest thing is keeping track of what's going on. It's one thing to delegate, but then if you don't follow up, then it's just like, you delegated me 10 things to me and you never checked on it. So
it's a very underrated skill to have that. And I know that from working in the project management realm too. Feels like you are babysitting and cat herding in the project management realm. And honestly, even though those are not the very unglorified ways of saying it, these are what keeps businesses afloat, is check-ins, right? Accountability, and making sure that people are doing what they're doing. So I love what you're saying here.
Yeah, to me, I never saw it as necessarily babysitting. Maybe there was a couple of people that, that were like, I always considered I was working with professionals. And it was more about the coordination effort, because you're doing a piece of this, a module, let's say, if we talk about high tech, you're doing a module, somebody else is doing another module, but there are dependencies between the two. And we're all looking at the same project plan or the same things and say, well, here's a dependency. I need this before I can complete this. So when is that going to be done? And then there's also dependencies on this one. So, and everybody can see this. And for me, a lot of it was also about educating the developers, the testers, and the users, kind of like what the project plan was about and what it was showing us. And, because people look at that and they think it's very, very complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Like this is what it's doing, the calculation for you and letting you know that, hey, based on this information you just give me, this is going to be late. And then we can look at. Yeah.
Let me ask you just a quick side question to this before I ask the next one is, obviously you're working with a lot of teams. How did you get your teams buy off in all of this task management and project management type of stuff? That's just as important as setting up the systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, like all these estimates and stuff like that, all these deliverables, I say, well, we need to do these deliverables. I got them from them. They told me, they said, well, I need to have a design document. Okay, so you respond. This guy is responsible for design document, and what kind of deliverables you need, blah blah blah. What does that look like, and how long does it take to do that deliverable, and all of that. And then he said, well, if he gives me that by this time, and I understand the scope a little bit, based on these assumptions, I'll be done the development by this date. And you have choice. It gives you choices as well. So you can say, at one point when say, well, I just received the design document and it's completely different than what I wanted, than what I expected. I told you 10 days or 100 days to finish this, but now it's not the same. So things have changed. So how do you handle that change? Well, you can kind of like take things back, scope it down to what you were expecting. You can increase the timeline. You can add more resources. You can split things. So it's about managing these changes so that you really focus on the timeline, what is truly important in terms of the end deliverable, the end goal for the business users or the business. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, because this is so, like, a lot of people may think that we're just talking about software right now, but this is so applicable to real estate investing, because even with a project, right? Like, let's say you have to buy a project, there's a due diligence process that can be project managed, right? Like you have to submit the LOI first, that's a gate, right? Yeah. Once the LOI is submitted, then you have your due diligence and then you have your closing, right? And so you have all these different sequences and flows and workflows, and things have to get done before something else gets done. And so it's very applicable to real estate investments. We want people to understand that this is a very valuable talent that you have been able to leverage to your success. So let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. How would you say that this task management approach or this task management orientation has helped amplify your investing success or even enabled it in the beginning?
Well, I think it's amplified it because we're able to establish like a process. We know that like we have like 200 houses right now at different stages of development. And then each one of them has, depending on what stage, there are different tasks that need to be done and different tasks that are assigned to different people. So what's great about it is that we know already. So we already know what the process is for each of the houses. It's always the same thing pretty much. And then we basically develop our systems to basically keep track of that and set the task. Every once in a while, there's changes, and these changes also we do the task as well. So if we have a change in, for example, in closing date when we sell the property, or the renovations get pushed, then it kind of like affect other things down the line. So without that, I think it would be absolute chaos.
You have all these independent activities need to happen, and ones need to happen before the others do. And you're trying to do this multiple times. And I think the key thing is the repeatability, which to me sounds a lot like scalability, especially if you can delegate.
Exactly. And this is what happened. I mean, we have an acquisition team, they have their task and stuff like that. And then there's a handover when it goes from, offer submitted into under contract and then into under construction. So that's when we get it and we have the house, and now we can start renovation. So that triggers a whole bunch of other things. And then we have a project coordinator that basically tracks this down, all the changes, all the rehab and all of that, any kind of change order that occurs. And then keep in touch with the salespeople. And the salespeople, well, they're trying to sell the house and they have to monitor the rehab, how well it's doing. And then, but they also have to make sure that they connected the lender to so that's done automatically through email. The CRM sends all these intro emails and all of that. Yeah. But you still have to monitor. So the salespeople right now is monitoring the buyers send the EMD, is the lender, and then also for the appraisal after the renovation. Okay, the renovation is complete or is about to be completed, or this is the estimated completion date. And the lender is ready to send the appraiser. Okay, well, let's start scheduling that. We've identified the appraiser, blah, blah, blah. And all of that is in there. And we have a dashboard actually that look at every day to track all of that. And everybody's speaking the same language, different stages and different tasks. We know exactly what's supposed to happen.
Exactly, because there's clarity in the process. When one person makes a change, it's going to affect the downstream. And I think that's so cool to be able to build that process out. And that feeds back to, my original point a couple of questions ago about how do you get your team to buy off on it, right? Mm-hmm. When you have a process that's clear like this, and they understand like why they're not getting the inputs they need to do their job, it's because of some upstream process, right? And then they understand that if they are delayed, it's going to affect the downstream thing because you have the clarity and you have the whole process already lined out. So I love that. Right. That's really great.
And the thing is that my team is part of the process, so I serve my team because sometimes the sales team is coming to me and they say, hey, it'd be nice if when this happened, you would actually send an email automatically. I said, okay. So now I'm a software developer. I go in CRM and I do something like that.
I love that.
And actually yesterday we do these cash flow spreadsheet as well. So on the acquisition team, so when they do some cash flow spreadsheet, and I automated the creation of these cash flow spreadsheet yesterday, and then because I had some free time, and then as we all do.
Yeah, right. Just a little bit.
So so the guys were so happy that all they knew now is push a button and then just create the spreadsheet, and then they can share it with potential buyers and stuff.
Absolutely. And it's really tough for people to not see the value in doing something like this if everything is spelled out, and the ability for them to not have to worry about administrative stuff. They can just focus on what they do really well, and then the process takes care of everything else. That's what I absolutely love about this, and I'm hoping that our listeners are taking away that processes are power. You have product, process, and people. And your product is real estate. We already know that works. The people are good because you've already got that there. Processes is where people struggle a lot. And so if you have those three things in progress, like I think it's Marcus Lemonis he was on TV, but those are the three things that he talked about that make businesses work really well. And I think like you've got all three of those things down pat, which is why you're seeing all the success.
Yeah, I mean, this is typical, business. When we're talking about business and corporate, it's about people, process. These are the two big ones, not just and the third one, but two big ones. I think it's kind of like getting these things lined up. The other thing too that people don't necessarily realize is that as an entrepreneur, you're wearing multiple hats, and eventually you want to take some of these hats off and give them to somebody else, right? And how do you do that? You need to define the process, and you need to document it. For me, like I did bookkeeping, so I used to do a lot of the bookkeeping and all of that for all the transaction, but that became too much. I wanted to offload that to somebody else. So I created an SOP, a standard operating procedure document that outlines how to record all the transactions correctly, so that when I look at the report, it makes sense to me. It was a pretty big document now, but now I passed it on to my bookkeeper, and he's the one that's managing that now. And whenever we do some changes, then he can manage those changes. And we're doing that for other things as well. So if you want to delegate your task to somebody else, prepare a document. It doesn't have to be like a Word document. You can also do videos on that as well.
Yep.
Here's how I do this transaction or this type of thing, this activity or this task. And then you record it with the screen share, whatever, and then say, this is how I do it. Every time you have this is how you do it. And then you delegate that to somebody else.
Yeah, I love that. And that's actually something that I've used so many times. And here's the extra step that you can do is you can have that person take your video and then document it.
Exactly.
Like take your video, whoever it is, and to say, hey, break this down into steps in Asana and SOP so that you and someone else can follow in the footsteps, the exact 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in order to achieve the result that you need. Awesome.
Exactly.
Great stuff.
Exactly. Same thing with the sales. So, and it's not just for me, like it's also for my sales team. So, we're getting a project coordinator that I mentioned earlier. So, there's some of these tasks that are going to be offloaded from them. Some of these tasks are going to be offloaded from other people on the team into that role. So that's going to create the SOP, if you will, for that particular job.
I think it's brilliant, and a lot of people need to understand this. I know that it's in the nitty gritty, and it's something that people don't like to work in, but these details are so important because it's the scalability of your business. That's why it's so important. I have 2 more questions left for you before we go into the rapid round. The first question is, how do you approach goal setting now with the execution of these goals in mind? So when you look to set a goal, I'm sure you're bringing in tasks and how you're going to break it up into pieces. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So for me, when I'm looking at goals, I'm looking at things that are a little bit more about scale. I'm really focusing on scale right now. So, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, how do we scale this business? And I'm looking at it and I'm also thinking about like why we were successful, blah, blah, blah. And how do we go to the next level? And you see a lot of problems. That's what you see. You see a lot of problems and say, well, we need to make this better. Some of it is about these like task management and stuff. How do we make this better? How do we improve that? How do we automate it and all that? But there are also bigger problems that we're trying to solve. So there's like in terms of scalability, there's one thing. How do we scale this business? So we're expanding to other markets and all that kind of stuff. But also, how do we help customers, our clients, our investors grow their passive income portfolio? Our big thing is to help people achieve financial freedom. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm go to podcast is really to help people achieve financial freedom. And I know I talk to a lot of people, a lot of investors. They say, well, I have $10,000. I don't have the $30,000 to buy one of your rental properties. I say, okay, well, you need to save more. You need to cut your spending. You need to get rid of Netflix, and maybe you need to get a side gig. Maybe you need to do, get more money and then get that done, and then get the ball rolling at least. So we're looking at these big problems and we say, well, how do we do that? Like, how do we solve that? And so that's why we started this. We're starting this tokenized real estate fund, which is basically a real estate fund that's going to be investing in single family rentals. It's going to have a single family rental portfolio already in there. And then the tokenized part of it is that it's going to be, you're going to buy a token for as little as $50. You're going to have a digital token that's going to represent a share of the business. And then that's going to be in your digital wallet. You'll be able to trade these coins on the open market. The coins appreciate. And you will also receive cash also through that same digital wallet. You're going to get like US dollars into your digital wallet for cash flow. So anything, any kind of distribution, any kind of cash flow that's occurring in that portfolio, you'll receive in your digital wallet. So that means
Very
that
cool.
if with as little as $50, you'd be able to have a share of that, have cash flow and all of that.
Yeah,
so that's going to solve a lot
awesome.
of problems for a lot of people.
I got to be honest with you. I'm fascinated by this tokenized real estate. And I think after the show, I want to hang around to talk with you a little bit more about that, because there's room for this in syndications as well. And that's the realm that I operate in. I've seen operators use it already, and I'm just fascinated by getting set up. I think it's a huge opportunity, especially once it takes off. So
it's kind of like, it's syndication. To me, it's syndication.
It is.
But on steroids.
Correct.
Because what are some of the problems with syndication? I mean,
liquidity.
First of all, it's that normally you have to put, exactly. You have liquidity problem. So that means that, hey, I put my money in and it's stuck in there for 3 to 5 years. Sometimes I get a little trickle of cash flow, but basically it's stuck in there. But with these tokens, you can transfer them, you can exchange them in these open exchanges like ATS and all of that. And we're going to train people. Obviously, we have a big education thing that needs to happen here. We need to educate a lot of people on that. But the liquidity problem is solved. If you need to get it back after 6 months, you can get your money back. The other problem too is the entry point. The entry point in syndication is often you have to be accredited most of the time. And sometimes the entry point is like $50,000 or $100,000. Well, that doesn't solve the problem that I was trying to solve. I'm trying to solve it for people that don't have enough money. They have like $5,000. They can't buy a rental property. So there's no way they're going to be able to go into a syndication. And they're probably not accredited.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
That's the other thing, right? So I really like that.
Yeah, I love it. And I definitely want to learn more about this for sure. So we'll be talking about that definitely either on this show or maybe on another show or outside of the show. So definitely excited about that. But
anytime, as things progress, I mean, I can definitely come back and give you an update and show you how that works. I think there's a big education piece that needs to happen because of course people don't have a digital wallet.
Of course. Last question I have before we head on to the rapid round part of the show is, what advice do you have for investors out there to increase their own organizational skills if they don't have your background?
Organization skills. So I think one of the best thing to recognize, I forget what that book was, but it was about entrepreneurship. So when you have to, first of all, your mentality needs to shift. So there's a mindset shift that when you're working full time, it's one thing, but when you're an entrepreneur, it's a different mentality. You're in the driver's seat. So you want to make sure that you think about it. You make things happen. That's what the entrepreneur is. And for me, like my mindset shift happened even when I was full-time employee. I never thought of myself as a full-time employee. My full-time job was a side gig. My main job was being an entrepreneur, doing business. And unfortunately, I had a side gig that was taking 40 hours of my time, but sometimes even more. And, but it was paying the bill. So I always saw my full-time job as a side gig so that my mindset was clear on that. So that's the first thing. And as you are an entrepreneur and you're working on your business, you need to categorize. It's called, the book that I'm referring to is called E-Myth.
Yes.
E-Myth.
I was thinking that in my head. I didn't want to say you though.
Yeah. And in this book, I mean, they basically say, well, every time you work in your business, you realize that there are different hats that you're wearing. There are different departments. Sometimes I'm selling, sometimes I'm doing invoicing, I'm doing accounting, I'm doing hiring, and you kind of like spread it out. At the beginning, it's all one, but then again, you kind of like define kind of what the processes, the tasks associated with that, and the ones that are the most repetitive, you kind of put them in a box and you give that box to somebody. We have a lot of people out there, if you look at Upworks or any of these platforms, where you can delegate these tasks to virtual assistant. The better defined these boxes are, these tasks are, the easier it is to transfer them to these virtual assistants. And it's very cheap to have them do the work for you.
Yeah, especially if you're working a full-time job and you're on the coasts, right? And you're looking to invest in the Midwest. Oftentimes, you can find a virtual professional that will be gladly working for you, at least in quarter one of 2022, for somewhere
Yeah.
around $5 to $7 an hour. And then
Yeah.
the more talented ones go up to like $8 or $9 an hour. And so we've been able to leverage that really, really well. And we're looking to expand our team out there because of the amazing work that they're doing. So
Yeah.
completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric, for all this great information. This has been fantastic. But we're going to head into the final segment of our show, which is called the Rapid Round. And it's 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And they're meant to be answered in about 30 seconds or less, if possible. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So question
Okay.
number 1, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And we ask that it not be Rich Dad or the Bible, because we get those all the time.
Oh yeah, no, so for me it would be What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Oh, awesome book.
Yeah. So that was an interesting book because it's about that mindset shift of kind of your full-time employee, and then it's just like sometimes you think, oh yeah, it's just a continuation, but it's not really.
Yeah, great book. Number 2, if people wanted to emulate your success, what is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
I would say again, I would say mindset, I think, and then start really categorizing and then boxing these processes and stuff like that, and getting some virtual assistant. I think
I love
that's
it.
the biggest thing.
Fantastic. Love it. Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 months that's helped you save time or effort?
Well, I use that all the time. It's not just in the last 3 months, but it's really, the customer relationship management software. For me, it's critical. So that would be the number 1 tool that I would use.
Got it. Anything in your personal life that maybe you found? Like for me, once I found Instacart, I was like, my whole world exploded,
well, well, I do again not Instacart, but Asana. I mean, I use that all the time. I mean, my calendar this is everything, but Asana is pretty good. I put more and more stuff in that, even for myself as a reminder.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So these are big ones for me.
Got it. All right. Number 4, if the people that you know had to describe you with one word, what do you think that word would be?
That's a tough one.
And let's not curse on this.
No, I know. I eliminated that one first. SAD probably doesn't want that. I don't know. I think I would say like a leader. I would say, I think that's what I would say. Not crazy.
Or maybe builder or provider, right? Based on what you're telling me, because of all the being a servant. No, I wouldn't say being a slave, but really just being a servant, like what's the right word? A steward.
Well, that's right. There's a lot of people also, they talk about, like CEOs and stuff like that, talk about themselves as the servant leader,
right?
Where they basically, they're the leader, but they're also serving the people that are working for the company, working for them.
Love it, man. I think that's a very accurate word as well. So, all right. Last question is, what small thing do most people not know about you?
Oh, well, maybe barefoot running. Is that something I like?
That's cool. I like that.
So I like barefoot running. So that's what I do if I can, as long as the ground is not crazy like California. But I was close to the beach here, so not anymore, but I was last year. So I was running on the beach every day, go swim in the ocean every day. I miss that. I'm just moved a little bit too far from the beach now. I'm in downtown LA, but
that makes sense, but it's still accessible. You could get there if you needed to, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've had an awesome time talking about a lot of important stuff that I hope all these entrepreneurs and side hustlers out there can take away for their business, and hope they understand how important it is to build processes and build this automation and think about scalability in terms of task management. So, but before we go, I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit more about how they can find out anything that's going on in your world and some of the things that you're working on outside of the investment fund in crypto.
Okay, so that's very good. Yeah. So on one side is the digital real estate fund. So this is keep an eye on that.
Yep.
You can go to MartelInvest.com for that. The turnkey rentals, if you want to buy turnkey rentals, MartelTurnkey. Everything social is actually on MartelEric.com. So you can have all my things there. TikTok, Eric Martel Official on TikTok and Instagram. So TikTok is an amazing platform. I love it. Everybody should be doing that. That's about it. I think this was a very good show. Thank you very much for exploring that, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on, and thank you for being on. It's been great. And for all those listeners out there who have listened all the way to the end, thank you guys so much for doing that. And if you could, please leave a rating or like or review wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, because by doing that, we'll get into good favor of the algorithm gods, and we'll continue to get more exposure to more individuals, which will lead to awesome guests to keep continuing to come on the show like Eric. So Eric, thanks again so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
And thank you listeners for listening, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone. This is Derek signing off.